Good afternoon. Welcome to Data and AI Live. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are in the world, mostly in the US and UK today. Today, the theme of the episode is on AI value creation again, and we're going to be discussing, my guest is Jan Beitner from Inflexion, and we're going to be talking about private equity, AI value creation. PE firms have long relied on financial and operational levers to create value. With the explosion of AI, this sort of begs the question now whether AI is the next big value creation engine or just a shiny new tech tool. So we'll get into that with Jan shortly. We've over 200 people sign up to attend live today, which is great. A real mix of people, investors, operators, operating partners, even some folks that have built foundational models. So yeah, thanks very much for joining us, wherever you are in the world. A few bits of housekeeping. We are live, so when you're live, things can go wrong. If they do, just bear with us, and we'll get back to normal. But hopefully they won't today. The format is that Jan and I are going to speak for probably around 30 minutes, and then we'll do 15 minutes or so of Q&A then at the end. We are live and interactive, so in terms of the Q&A at the end, don't wait to ask your questions at the end. If you've got any questions that come into your head as we go through, please do ask them by putting your question in the comments box below on LinkedIn. We'll endeavour to answer all of your questions either as we go through or in the Q&A at the end. So any questions, please do get them down below. Let me bring Jan in at this stage. Hi Jan, how are you?
Good to see you. Very good. Maybe I'll do a very quick intro myself. I'm Jan Beitner. I'm
Please.
the director for data and AI at Inflexion, where I'm in the value acceleration team looking at our portfolio. Maybe I'm a bit of a special animal in PE, in that I have a PhD. So I used to do physics, but a lot of code there. And then I worked for BCG. To maybe say two things about Inflexion. Inflexion is a mid-market investor in Northern Europe. We exclusively do private equity buyouts and our minority investments, but fairly large minorities typically. We also have a US office, around 16 billion in euros in AUM. Very focused on various subsectors. For example, data. They have around 5-6 data companies. In total, it's around 50 something portfolio companies, and my role is to look after them all from the perspective of data and AI.
Fantastic. Great introduction, Jan, and thanks for setting the scene for everyone in that regard. Let's get into it then, and I'll start with the big question of the day. Is AI becoming a new value creation engine for private equity, or is it just another tech tool?
Yes, it is becoming definitely a value creation engine for us. I think it becomes a value creation engine not only for PE, but a lot in the world. Just look at how many public companies are also investing hard, but of course also private companies. And I think it's fundamentally changing a lot of things in how we do business. And so maybe I can give you a couple of examples of what we are seeing very concretely even in our portfolio and how that can make a massive difference. So we have a place that does network managed services mostly. And so you got a factory, got a lot of switches in there. And all those configurations need to be updated from a security perspective, but also like as a network itself. And that's something you can do really well with AI. And Sistar launched that tech really recently. And now we have like some crazy commercial traction here. And I think it shows that if you are willing to disrupt, then you're actually gonna really reap those benefits.
Help me understand that a bit more then in terms of Sistar. What was the automation of those network updates? Tell me at a user level how that helped the business.
Yeah, so if you think about like basically say you have that network and you wanna give that to someone to actually manage it, right? What do you want? You want that they check that the security is right on each single device. There's switches in there that need to be updated. And the security guidance changes all the time because there's a new attack vector and means you got to update things. But of course, like a device is also in that ecosystem. So if you update one, you probably have to update the next one as well. And so typically this is done by engineers who look into one after the other. And there are thousands, many thousands of those devices. This takes ages. And so basically until they are through all of them, voila, you can start at the beginning again. Quite laborsome. And all this guidance that comes through, they effectively, right, there's a policy on like how the configuration should be looking, that from the company, there's a policy from the different vendors, and that just needs to be applied with an understanding of exactly how the configuration file is supposed to look like. That can be a couple of hundred lines of configuration. And AI can take that and create that configuration for you.
So
what do we instantly? So not every month someone goes through your stack.
Yeah. So what are we talking here in terms of cost savings, in terms of time or labor hours for engineers? What kind of numbers are we talking?
Yeah, so I think like so for us, of course, this is something where this allows us to create a better service, like selling them more as a software. But it's also particularly, I think, the benefit is very much there for the customer. So that's the reason why we've got so many inquiries, because effectively the quality of that service is a ton better, and that gives you a big competitive advantage, because as I said, you can now do this kind of like almost in real time, rather than this taking ages to update. And I think it's just one example of disruption that's coming from one company to the next. And this is just like I think that's not as obvious and trivial, because often we hear about customer service stuff, right? That's probably like the most touted use case, or coding. But actually almost all service companies, or a lot of service companies, have a lot of high volume processes that actually can be automated with AI. And so I think the key thing is that this is not an isolated case. This is a pattern. And therefore, it is actually, coming back to the original question, one of the key value drivers for us going forward, because it's something that you do differently, right? A value driver has to be something that you do differently from before. Otherwise, why do you need a team to help anyone going through that? Why do you need an investor to help you go through that?
And I think the point I heard with Sistar, it's not just the operational efficiencies, it's the fact it's much more accurate and therefore better service.
Yes, and much faster.
Yeah. So it's something, I guess the point being, this is something that's been truly transformational for them as a services business. What are the actually let me ask you, I'll come back to Sistar because it's kind of an interesting point, but any other portfolio companies, Inflexion portcos that you want to mention, or are good examples of where AI has been truly transformational?
Yes, there are a couple of these, and I think like some other examples are things that are probably like our listeners would identify themselves probably much faster than the Sistel example I just mentioned. But for example, we have a legal tech company, and we have a healthcare data company. So particularly all the data companies making your data accessible for your customers in a much faster way changes the customer experience, right? And so effectively, this is a chatbot that allows you to go through that data and surface the right answers. And I think some of the key learnings is you got to build that really with the underlying data in mind. And some of the data that we have there is structured, some of the data is unstructured, particularly in legal. And you got to surface then the different use cases that people ask for directly. And it makes a massive difference, particularly for non-superpower users who don't visit the platform every single day, who don't exactly know their way around. So you basically address a different customer group really well. And particularly if you've been focused previously very much on the super expert users, then this is transformational in that you're reaching a different customer group now.
Yeah. A quick question on these two you mentioned. We'll come back to Sistel because I've got a question on that. But a quick question on these two in terms of those sort of chatbot GPT style sort of data interrogation products, if you like. In your experience, how have or from what you've seen in your portcos or any other business, how have they monetized those tools? Are they sort of within the enterprise platform or service and just sort of enhancing the value, or have they been monetized as add-on products? And in your experience, is there a good way or the right way of monetizing those kind of products, or is it just a case-by-case basis?
So I think it comes down to what the product is doing. And in those chatbot instances, you're not creating a really completely different new product. You're creating a new way of disseminating your existing product. And so this is monetized mostly through price increases and your ability to grow top line. It's very difficult to monetize those type of products as a standalone add-on. And effectively, what you're doing there is like you're improving convenience, and you want everyone to actually get those benefits. You don't want to actually have some people churn because they don't have subscribed to a product. That will be like quite a bad outcome, right? And so because you're improving convenience, that's when you're driving this through price increases rather than through additional subscription modules. Different story if you can bring additional insight, right, and actually change the value that you deliver.
Yeah, I hear you. Going back to Sistel then, which was a great story because you've got a services business whose one of their sort of core services they've managed to largely automate, which has improved operational efficiency, increased accuracy and value for their customers. But were there any, like, what was it about Sistel that allowed them to do that? Because that's a kind of a dream of a lot of services business who would look at that and go, great. But what was it about Sistel that allowed them to do that? Were there certain conditions within the business that allowed them to be that successful?
They integrate already very strongly with their customers, right? And so they have that data to actually do that. They have the ability to drive that through. And I think this is one of the key barriers is data capture effectively for services companies. So they don't necessarily have all their data actually accessible to AI. And there are other examples in our portfolio where one of the first key initiatives you're driving through is that ability to actually have data captured as accessible to AI and have a proper system, right? Outlook is not an appropriate system to automate upon, for example. And so how do you actually capture the data so that our AI tools can go over it, can be automatically triggered, can be automatically saying, okay, I got to pull this from another system in there. And just having that good digital infrastructure to start with is really, really important. And this doesn't mean that you need to have a data lake. Those are very separate use cases. But we're talking about actual digitization of your existing book. And that's been very good at Systlaw.
Okay. Yeah, I see. If and just to interject just quickly for everyone, Jan and I are probably going to talk for about another 15 minutes, then we're going to do Q&A. So if you've got questions, please do get them in the comments box in LinkedIn down below. If you're, and to carry on from that example, if you're listening to this and you're, I don't know, a CEO of a services business or a non-technical operating partner of a services business, the first thing is how does that person understand whether their data is accessible to AI or not? What are the questions they should ask of, their CTO or whoever else? And if it's not accessible to AI, what are the steps that businesses should start thinking about taking to get them to the point where it is?
I think that the first one is to map your process and to understand how do you deliver actually a service or product, right? And so like what of that actually is the piece that would be transformational if you would be able to deliver that with AI instead? Because a lot of the problems are you got to focus, right? And so the question is, where in your value chain actually do you need to attack? As I said, like sometimes maybe you might need a data lake, right? Particularly if you have a tech product. But sometimes you might not need that at all. And that very much depends on where in your value chain and in your user journey in some respects is actually the automation and the value of AI. So I think that's number one, the most important thing to do, to understand actually where do you want to focus on, because otherwise you get just lost in, oh yeah, we need to do those 50 digitization initiatives, and each is like a couple of millions, and that is like immediate non-starter, right? And so once you've done that, you understand where the issue is. Is it more in your capturing, or is it in the emails? Is it about how people send work to each other? Is it about integrating with your systems? Is it actually about having a system that stores a type of data? Is it more about your processes, and you need to standardize processes? Because obviously you can't automate an unstandardized process. You can have variation, but you can't automate it if you don't know what it is. So I think there's a couple of things that you got to figure out where to actually start.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that in your role, this is the kind of thing that this sort of strategic focus is a lot of what you're working on Inflection's portfolio companies with, I assume.
Yes. Understanding where exactly should be focused is the key bet. We are operating in the mid-market, but I think regardless how large you are, focus is what gets you success.
Yeah. Any other sort of typical challenges that you see within your portfolio companies or wider?
I think the other parts is if you're thinking from a tech product, right? The challenges are very different, I'd say, than services. And I think tech products are often built on infrastructure that's suited for that specific use case, right? Like you have a typical transactional database, but that database cannot take the load of AI, because it will just slow down, and suddenly your entire product would slow down. And we all know that latency is the thing that kills customer experience. So what do you need to do? You need to offload the data maybe into an analytics database, so that AI can actually work on that properly. And so there's an additional infrastructure to look at. I think that's one key challenge to make actually a tech product ready. The other bit, I think, is if you, particularly also for tech companies, people like to build things rather than buy. There's a lot of stuff on the market that you can just buy. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But if you build, but even if you buy, it's key to focus on measurement. I think it's often you have that idea, I think, that if there's a number or if there's an outcome, it kind of must be right or it must be wrong. But with AI, right, there must be in the middle. And the question is, how do you get this to a close to 100% performance? And you don't need complete 100%, you just need to be better than humans. And humans are surprisingly bad once you start measuring them. But you've got to measure the AI, right? And you've got to measure the human to say, we are actually better with an AI solution, and therefore it makes sense to put it there. And coming from a measurement perspective, there's just a different mindset that I think often is not existing in engineering organizations, and it's probably a mindset that data scientists bring.
Yeah. Well, perhaps that's a good, because I know we spoke about before, one of the challenges being talent. So perhaps that's a good segue into this topic then, Jan. So, because I was going to ask, in terms of all of these areas that we've just discussed over the last 10, 15 minutes ago, if we're thinking infrastructure, strategic focus, digitization, what kind of talent typically do your portfolio companies need that they haven't got? And what are the pitfalls that you've seen as a separate question in trying to secure that talent?
Yeah, and I think this comes back to why this is also a value creation engine for private equity, because those are all things that almost no one has done before, right? And simply because there are not that many businesses who've done an AI product transformation. So how do you actually, particularly if you have a lot of legacy tech that just exists in lots of mid-market firms, right? How do you actually get those people, and how do you identify what you should be doing? And so I think this is one of the key things that we as a fund can bring to say, okay, we can actually identify those opportunities and help you build, and we have the pattern recognition to help you deliver success and transformation. So if I'm thinking about the talent that you need to answer your question, I think it again depends very much on the problem that you're solving. And frankly, right, if you looking at more traditional AI for recommendations systems for if you've got a customer consumer facing business, or you think about dynamic pricing, or you think about predicting churn, so more on the go-to-market side of things, that's a very typical data scientist, AI leader type position. That's very, very different from building a AI product, how most people probably also on this call understand it. And so I think it's really important what you're looking for. And are you doing this for services, or are you doing this for tech? And I think In services, this is a people question. There's a lot of change management that needs to be done. Doesn't mean you still need someone with technical expertise, right? We need doers, not talkers, but you still need to understand how to manage change, and how to manage change in a people organization is completely different. You can't just come like and say, yeah, here's a product I'm going to offer my customers, because that product means change in the organization, not just the deployment of some code. And so that then again gets very different if you're talking about like a tech organization, where you probably need someone who much more thinks from a product perspective, and thinks about what's the value for the customer, why does this fit in our product strategy, how do we actually make this commercially work, what's our go-to market. I think those are very different personalities, and so I'd say it very much depends about what do you want to do, and the same as a services, you can do more internally, right, on efficiency, or you can go externally like Cisco and actually offer a different product. Again, those are different type of people that you need to deliver change.
Is one harder to find than the other, in your opinion? And how should in an interview scenario, how should companies be assessing?
I think the hardest is in services and delivering proper automation and AI products. The simple reason is, one, that hasn't happened that much. Like if you go to like tech companies, you will have a lot of people that come from startups who maybe have done some of that work, and they know how AI products in principle work. So there can be like almost like getting an expert to deliver a new feature. In services, it's much harder because almost no one has done much of this, and so it's not like you find a ton of talent that lies around. But also, the organization has never done anything like that. Right? Like an IT, like a tech organization has probably shipped a new feature before, but a service organization has probably not seen that much tech before in their life, and so that's where it gets much harder, and you need to think about the like that change management and that combination with tech. Sometimes you need two people.
Yeah. There's the other thing is I know, and this is slightly veering off topic, but only because I know there's a lot of P folks attending this, either operating partners or investors, but from firms that haven't got data and AI expertise internally. So they haven't got a Jan, on a data and AI expert on their value creation team. So one thing I think, and I've heard from people who are interested in this, is what are the things, if they wanted to find an AI value creation expert like yourself, what are the kind of skill sets they should be looking for, in your opinion? And I know this is sort of asking you to talk about yourself to some extent, and also, again, how should they assess for that interview if they are looking to bring someone like you into their value creation team?
I guess it very much depends what type of value creation model you have, but I guess we are all influencers in some respects of trying to get other people to do stuff, and so I think that previous expertise, I think, in consulting can help a lot, and that's probably why you see a lot of ex-consultants, including me, in this line of work. So I think this is just like a very helpful piece if you've seen that. I think it massively helps if you've shipped that before. So probably now more like a hobby, but I used to do transformers and coded up transformers before anyone actually knew what a transformer was. I was not doing that with a portfolio because this doesn't scale. But understanding how things actually work is massively helpful also with credibility, right? Particularly if you're talking to a tech company and you have no idea on the topics that you're advising them on how to actually deliver that yourself. If you don't know how to really approach that, I think it's really, really hard to help them hold accountable vendors and actually scope the issues. So I think you need to have that operational real experience. Otherwise, it's very difficult to pull off, in my view, successfully.
Yeah. So you're leveraging not only your consulting background, but also it's the fact that you kind of understand what's going on under the hood in a way that perhaps a more generalist value creation expert may not, and therefore you can gain that credibility.
Yes, and I think it's also in my consulting, we actually delivered real solutions as well. And I think that's like I was maybe at the lucky intersection of there's some strategy projects, but also like some implementation projects, and I think getting that both is probably super, super helpful. But I think you got to really think about what your model is, because some teams maybe have a much more like deliver something, like deliver a POC maybe directly, very hands-on. Depends like how many portfolio companies you've got and how you actually want to drive that change in the portfolio. So I wouldn't say there's like just one profile and needs to be like my profile that I have. It depends a little bit on your model to deliver value. And I think that actually is surprisingly, and I think probably all people from working for a GP would agree with it, surprisingly inhomogeneous way of doing things. It's very heterogeneous, like so many different models. So I'm not sure anyone
right.
has really figured it out.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, and I've seen that with P firms I've spoken to, where there's some are a lot more hands off with portfolio companies, with others, which I've seen is one area where it's been a challenge, because I think by the very nature of these kind of initiatives, you need to be pretty hands on. So yeah, that can be challenging. What I'm I mean, just by the way, for everyone listening, everyone's very quiet out there today. Hopefully that's because you've been listening so intently, but we've had no questions in the comments yet. So this is kind of last chance. Any questions, please do get them in the comments, and we'll attend to them. If not, Jan and I will probably be out of here in 5 minutes, I'd imagine. So yeah, last call. Any questions, please do get them down in the comments. I'm summing up here and going back to our original theme as AI and I'm summing up based on everything we've spoken about and what I've heard. But my overall conclusion is that it feels like when people say AI is not new value creation engine, it's just another shiny new tech tool. It feels like they're saying that because actually it's really hard. And summing up everything, kind of what's front of my mind is, and you've shown it through your examples, AI can be truly transformational and quickly, perhaps in a way that other technologies in the past haven't been. But, and we've discussed a lot of the challenges and pitfalls here, it's very, very hard. Is that a fair conclusion? But let me finish by saying it feels like it's worth hardships based on how truly transformational it can be. Sistal's a great example.
I think it's like very much of a there's a real change here, right? That you've got to make, often even in mindsets and culture, and so that is really, really hard. I think even where, and not for all companies and business models, this is always immediately transformational, but they will have lots of processes where this is actually like really changing, and so it's more the key of driving the adoption really well. And that's not trivial to do, right? Typically, like people win because they're really, really good at adoption of new things. Now we have a situation where there's also real disruption in some parts of the businesses, and I think that this is really, really difficult. And so in some, it feels like, oh yeah, there's so many use cases you could apply this. Where should I start? And I think that's where it's important to take a step back and like really focus on the stuff that matters, and think where maybe where it's a bit easier, you rather like adopt. But if you don't have anyone in a firm who's responsible for all this, it's just not going to happen. And so I think there's no natural responsible in a firm. It's not like, oh yeah, this is go-to-market. Voila, it's the COO or CCO. This is a cross-functional task, and that makes it so difficult. And you got to appoint someone who actually does it. And if you don't have anyone, it doesn't happen on its own because it's hard.
Yeah, as with most things, I guess it takes good leadership and real leadership to achieve it. Any other, before we finish up yet, any other pitfalls, challenges that we haven't talked about that you think we should have done, that you think are important?
I think reiterating the importance of measuring everything. That's obviously the one thing that, and not only the outcome KPIs, but actually like the AI itself. I think you talked about how engineers are not sufficient, and you really need a data scientist in many cases, particularly if you build and you don't buy. But I think even if you buy, then it's really useful to have someone like that to bring that measurement ethos. And I think the cross-functional part is really important, and maybe what we didn't talk so much about is like that product mindset. So I think what happens now in PE, that we think a lot more about product, and maybe we were in the very past thinking much more around financials and what's your TAM, and we looked at like the underlying systems more from a hygiene point of view, where we thought like, okay, if it really sells and the place has super high margins, well, it must mean they have a good product, right? And if people like the product, maybe everything's okay. But now you've got to really think about, okay, what's the future of the product, and how do you want to develop it, or do you want to completely change it to some extent? So I think the importance of product has really, really gone up.
Yeah. Great. Anything else you want to cover just before we finish off, Jan? Anything we haven't spoken about?
I don't think there's anything else that we like. There's obviously many topics that we could go really, really into depth. But I think there's, for each of them, we probably got another like hour to go into. But I think broadly we've covered the most important.
Maybe in the next session we do a deep dive into a number of these areas. Well, thanks very much for today. This has been fascinating, and I really appreciate all your insights and specific insights into your portfolio companies. I think this will be really interesting to a lot of people. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, where can they find you? What's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, just ping me probably on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I have a very unique surname, so easy to find me. And I think that's also quite easy way to find out what actually my email address is at Inflexion.
Okay.
Don't cold call me because I get too many cold calls.
Well, we'll leave that a mystery for people to work out. But brilliant, Jan. Thanks once again. Really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining us, and yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.
Thanks so much.